Assalamualaikum. So you guys are all here. Alhamdulillah. Apologies for the technical difficulties and a little bit of the delay. No, it's fine. It's actually perfect right now. Yeah. Alhamdulillah. Thank you guys. So inshallah, we're going to get started right away. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. نوينا التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, all praise is due to God, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. We intend to learn and to teach, to remind and be reminded, to benefit and be benefited, to improve and be improved, and to encourage holding fast to the book of God in the way of his messenger, and to call unto guidance and to direct towards good, hoping for the countenance of God and his pleasure and his proximity and his reward. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and his noble family, companions, and followers. Ameen. So inshallah, we're going to get started with what we normally do, which is before looking at the verses for this week, how was the assignment for last week? It was a good assignment? Okay, alhamdulillah. I see a lot of smiles. That's good. I knew we were going to have something to share this week. Actually, someone who was not here, they texted me the reflection. I just want to pull it out. And so they said that from doing this assignment, they actually had two partners, and they it's a very like a simple check-in with another person's goals actually helps her to incorporate their goals into her own goals, because it felt really wrong to check up on people on if they're doing something and not be doing it yourself. So so her takeaway was that it's important to be in good company. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. How about for the rest of you? Any reflections from the assignment? Sophie? Mm-hmm. 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 Uh-huh. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, mashallah. So in the end, it's like having someone to sort of brainstorm the solutions with you rather than just kind of like do it on your own. It's helpful. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Do you have the reflection you want to share?
Yes. For me, it was staying off my phone from sleep.
Uh-huh.
And, we get a lot of help. Better, so it was opposite, waking up without being on his phone. So it's kind of like a good reflection. Like every time I would text him, I was like, okay.
Inshallah.
It was good.
That's good. Alhamdulillah. Any other thoughts from this particular activity? Did any of you feel like, gosh, I can do a lot more than I thought I could?
Yes.
Yeah. Did any of you feel like it's, like did I mean, I'm sure, well, I'll give my own example. There was 2 of the days out of the 7 that I didn't meet my goals. So, but my partner each time was like, it's okay, you know, tomorrow's a new day, or it's okay, maybe this, you know, this is like, they let me slip, but not in a way that was like, okay, forget about your goals. It was more like, you know, don't be hard on yourself, and you can try again, essentially. So that was helpful. Just it's like if you have a habit to be kind of like, oh, I wanted to get 100%, you know, just having someone say it's okay, the next day is a new day. You know, so alhamdulillah, I appreciated that. Yes.
One thing that was really nice was my partner and I, we didn't meet our goals one of the days on the same day, and we both had reasons for that. So we were able to talk about those reasons and then support each other through those things. So that was very helpful.
Okay, mashallah. Any other thoughts? You don't have to, like, thank you, by the way, for those of you who shared what your goals were, but you don't have to share what it is if you want to just, yes.
I'm not gonna lie, so we all like we're after class we were just like discussing what goals we want to talk about. And somehow every time someone shared something, we're like, oh, I could work on that too. I could work on that too. So it's like a reflection on how much like we can continue to like, you know, better ourselves and to continue working. And it was obviously nice to have accountability to like constantly remind you like, oh shoot, I need to like work on that today. So
Do you feel like it was accountability or more of like an encouragement, like a little push forward?
I would say both because I was encouraging, but then I had to like also be accountable for myself. If I want to check in, I need to make sure that I'm doing my part too. So I picture it as like the both.
Okay. Did anyone find that they were able to do the assignment even though on days when they didn't get it? Like there was a couple, I think there was one day, I think it was just one day where I didn't actually check in at the right time. And so, and vice versa. So did you guys find that even if you didn't get the check-in, you were still doing it because you were expecting to get the check-in? Yeah. That's alhamdulillah. I think there's a lot to actually unpack from how much more we do and how much better we do and how much stronger we feel when we're kind of with one another and in each other's company and doing it together rather than completely by ourselves. So alhamdulillah, and inshallah today we're going to go to the verses for this week. Let me just share the screen. So before normally I would start with the allegorical and spiritual commentary, but they're all connected, like the commentaries of these verses and the last week's verses. So probably next week is going to be majority allegorical commentary, and I'm just going to do it all mostly on that day for next week. But so for now, we're actually going to continue from where we left off in the actual tafsir, inshallah. I'm also really excited about these verses because some of my favorite verses are in this set. I don't know if we don't actually have the full time to go into it. I don't have time to get on my soapbox for this set of verses, but we'll do the tafsir inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. للفقراء المهاجرين الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأموالهم يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا وينصرون الله ورسوله أولئك هم الصادقون. For the poor immigrants who were expelled from their homes and their property, seeking bounty and contentment from God, and who help God and His Messenger, it is they who are the truthful. والذين تبوأوا الدار والإيمان من قبلهم يحبون من هاجر إليهم ولا يجدون في صدورهم حاجة مما أوتوا ويؤثرون على أنفسهم ولو كان بهم خصاصة ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. And those who were settled in the land and in belief before them love those who emigrated to them and find in their breasts no need for that which they were given. They prefer others over themselves, even if they be impoverished, and whosoever is shielded from the avarice of his soul, it is they who shall prosper. والذين جاءوا من بعدهم يقولون ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. And those who came after them say, Our Lord, forgive us and our brothers who preceded us in faith, and place no rancor in our hearts toward those who believe. Our Lord, truly you are kind, merciful. So the first verse, for the poor immigrants who were expelled from their homes and their property, seeking bounty and contentment from God, and who help God and his messenger, it is they who are the truthful. This verse starts with the word for, right? And it doesn't say what is for them. What is for them? Based on last week's tafsir, what is for them? What was that? Yes, it's the spoils of war. So this is the first category of people that's being mentioned. That the spoils are of war. It's considered mahdhuf or implied but missing. Are for the poor immigrants who were expelled from their homes and their property, seeking bounty and contentment from God. And so, who are these poor immigrants? There's a discussion about the state of the muhajirin. And also in this verse, going back to the previous verse, there's this emphasis that rather than the spoils of war being used to further enrich the wealthy, the spoils of war are to be distributed amongst the poor. So that's one aspect of it. Now, around 100 people left in the hijrah, in the first leaving of Mecca. There are people who came afterwards as well, who migrated from Mecca to Medina, but the first hijrah, the famous hijrah, was about 100 men. 100 men were in that group. And it's mentioned that this verse is a proof that the Quraysh actually stole or took over or took ownership of what people had left behind, because they weren't actually poor, right? When they left their homes, they had wealth, right? What they left behind, because they left, the Quraysh just stole it, right? And so they weren't people who were homeless originally. They were forced out of their homes. And then when they left, after their wealth was stolen, that's what made them in the situation of being poor. And so this verse is used as a proof that the Quraysh had taken over their homes and their wealth that they had left behind. In terms of talking about what it was that they were seeking, these people who left their, and their livelihoods, everything, why did they leave and what were they seeking? This verse says that they were seeking bounty, fadlan min Allah, right? And his waridwana, and contentment. So bounty, there's a difference of opinion on what does the bounty mean and what does the contentment mean. So bounty, in one opinion, indicates what the muhajirin wanted, what they were seeking in this world, meaning they left everything and now when they're going to Medina, they're going to want to have a new home, they're going to want to be able to establish themselves. So bounty meaning that. And then contentment indicates what they were seeking in the hereafter. That's one of the opinions. The other one is it's the same meaning, but they said that bounty is when they were asking Allah for his rizq, and then contentment means what they want in the next life. Others said bounty is a reference actually to they were leaving all of this world behind, and they're seeking God's bounty as being paradise. They're doing it so that they would earn paradise through this action. And also the contentment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the final opinion says that bounty refers to an increase in iman as well as an increase in contentment, for the idea of it being an increase in both. So it's interesting because in the opinions that are mentioned, some of them say they want something from this life and they want something in the hereafter, and those are there. There are also opinions that said no, their entire intention was essentially spiritual. They want paradise, they want the next world, they want contentment with God, they want an increase in faith, and so the fact that these are also from the mentioned opinions, I think is very beautiful, especially when we come back to what happens later in the last verse, inshallah. So this idea, even the wording of it, وَيَنْصُرُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, I think is one of the most beautiful, phrases in the Quran, that they helped God and His messenger, right? They supported God and His messenger. And so it is they who are the truthful. And so how did they help God and His messenger? Well, they did so by striving and by essentially when they got pushed out of their homes with the Prophet ﷺ, it's like they're saying, okay, our destiny is his destiny, right? Like if he's going to be attacked, then we're going to be attacked. If whatever is happening to him, we're with him. And so this support that they gave to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, so that he could do the mission that he was sent with. And then the word truthful, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصَّادِقُونَ, it's more like, it's translated as truthful, and it has that meaning, but it's also like, it is they who are the true, meaning like the sincere, the truly sincere. And so they're given this description, which is like from the descriptions of, like the highest stations, like when like from the definition of like tasawwuf, right? The definition of spiritual refinement is sidqu tawajjuh ila Allah. It's like a true turning oneself over to God, right? So this idea of being from the sadiqun is like a really high thing. It's people who are very true in their faith. In other verses in the Quran, مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ رِجَالٌ صَدَقُوا مَا عَاهَدُوا اللَّهَ عَلَيْهِ, right? From the believers, there are some who were really true to the covenant they made with God. So it's like from the believers they're a righteous category. There's this elite group that was really true. So the muhajirin are being praised here. They are the ones who are the sincere. They were like really true to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's mentioned, Imam Ibn Ajiba comments on this, and he says that they are truthful and they are true because, and this is shown by the fact that they left their homeland. Many of them left some of their family members behind in Mecca who couldn't make the migration. So imagine like if you're a refugee, from a war-torn area, if you've experienced that yourself, maybe you can relate a little bit, but it's not an easy thing to relate to in terms of, if you haven't experienced it, which is to be forced out of your home and to leave some of your family members behind, wondering what's going to happen to them, and you have to go. You don't know what's going to happen to the ones that you left behind. So they left their homeland, they left their families. Some of them, it's like they're not leaving family members behind that are believers. They're leaving their families that are disbelievers. So it's like, our paths are not the same anymore. It's like saying goodbye. But also what's mentioned is they left their homeland, some of them left their families, some of them left their children and progeny. Some of them were a lot older and they had adult kids who didn't do the migration. So it's a major sacrifice on the part of the muhajirin. And so truthful, or being true or sincere, is like a very good description. And it's essentially, the meaning of it is those who act in accordance with their beliefs and also their words. In stark contrast to the munafiqun, who act, basically who are criticized earlier in other verses, or in later verses, who said one thing, but they did another, or said one thing and internally believed a different thing. So this is like in stark contrast to them. These are people whose actions and their words and their beliefs are all consistent with each other. And that's not easy, right? Because we can believe in a lot of good things, but we can be like, I don't know if I can do any of those things, right? So this idea of like the person whose belief and their action is the same is a really, really high station, right? I mean, I'm just thinking about how hard it is for me to quit coffee. Like it's parallel. And those who were settled in the land and in belief before them love those who immigrated to them and find in their hearts or their breasts no need for that which they were given. Here, again, the sentence, the ayah starts with and. Okay, so what is for, like, what does that mean? Like when you're looking at it, like even from the translation, linguistically, and them, what about them? I feel like you know. You might know. You're not sure? Okay. It's the same one as the one before. Yeah, this category is actually, they also have a right to the spoils of war. Okay, so the Ansar were from the people who actually had a right to the spoils of war. So this the same thing that was mahluf, or that was implied for the earlier verse, is implied in this verse. So the spoils of war are for the poor immigrants, and the spoils of war, the poor immigrants and those who were settled in the land. So it's describing two different categories of people. Now, these people who are settled in the land in belief and in belief before them. This description, there's a lot of conversation in the tafsir about like, okay, so the Ansar, they believed after the Muhajirin did. And they didn't go through the same hardships that the Muhajirin did. And they didn't have to make the same heavy sacrifices, that the Muhajirin did, like especially at the time of the Hijrah. So why are they being described as they were settled in the land and in belief before them? How do we reconcile that the Muhajirin have a really high rank and the Ansar are new Muslims? They're good, like obviously they're also being praised, and we'll see more of that. But how can the Ansar have belief before them when they became Muslim later? They knew he would be coming. So some of them did become Muslim before his arrival. But generally speaking, even those who became Muslim in Medina, didn't they become Muslim in Medina after those who became Muslim in Mecca?
Is it possible because they never met the Prophet? Being the Prophet
Because
is an advantage.
is an advantage.
Like not believing and not seeing them.
It's an interesting reflection. Yes, that's not what the tafsir says, but hold on to it because there's something good in there. Yeah. Okay, I will keep you guys in suspense no longer. So this is like, Imam Ajib like spends some length in saying this more than once in so many ways. So I'll just explain it. And those who were settled, they were settled in the land and in belief before them. So the words settled in the land and in belief, it's maf'ul ma'ahu. So like it means that like it's a hal, it's a state that was at the same time. They had this set of circumstances together before the Muhajirin could have these set of circumstances together. So they had both faith, right, in their hearts and the ability to practice it openly because they were settled in the land, right? This was their city. No one was going to tell them they can't pray. They were not going to get persecuted by the Quraysh for following the Prophet. They had freedom. So they were actually able to openly, the ones who believed in Medina were able to openly perform the sha'a'ir of the deen without any consequences, right? Without major, I should say, consequences, like the people, unlike the Quraysh, the Muhajirin. And so It's not that they had belief before them, it's that they were able to believe and practice openly before them. Does that make sense? And so they come together. This idea, and he emphasizes multiple times, this does not mean they had more ikhlas than them. Rather, they had more outward freedom to establish their religion. And then the description is that they love those who immigrated to them and find in their breasts no need for that which they were given. And in this, there's some commentary as well. Their love for the Muhajirin, Imam Rajiba says, came from their deep love for the religion itself. And they had no hesed, they had no ill will towards the Muhajirin for receiving special treatment from the Prophet Muhammad when he gave almost the majority, right? The vast, like he almost exclusively gave the spoils of war from that came from Bani Nadir. He almost exclusively gave it to the Muhajirin. And so they had nothing in their hearts that were like objecting to that generosity of the Prophet Muhammad with them. And there's actually a really beautiful story in this regard. I think, yeah, let me go back a little bit and then I'll come back to, there's a number of stories, but let me take it one step at a time. So in the land refers to Medina, and they were settled in their belief in Medina. And Medina had embraced Islam before the arrival of the Prophet Muhammad. And there's one account, Ibn Abbas narrated, that the Prophet Muhammad came to the Ansar. He came to the people of Medina and he said, if you split your wealth and your homes with the Muhajirin, then I will split the spoils of war among you and the Muhajirin. But if you want to keep your wealth and your homes, then you can, and then I'll just give the spoils of war to the Muhajirin. And so, kind of look at their response. They said something that was, it's so beautiful. It's like heroic words, a time when people said great things. They said, no, we will split our wealth and our homes with them, and we will prefer that they take all of the spoils too. That's who they were, mashallah. And another story that's also mentioned in this regard is there was what is it called? Trying to say, Ahl Sufa. How many of you guys know who Ahl Sufa is? There were people who lived, who they. Alhamdulillah for people who pay attention. Not that you guys aren't. Us Nawi's special people who memorizes these things. Yes. 2 surahs ago.
Yeah. That the settings, right?
Yes. Yeah. But they were called the people of Sufa is like the veranda, right? Almost like the patio area around. And that's where people would literally sleep there. And people would come and feed them there at the same time. And they were poor. They were really impoverished. And so it says one of the people, there was an incident where the Prophet Muhammad entrusted one of the people from Ahl Sufa. These are the poor people who lived outside the Prophet's masjid in Medina. And he took him to one of the people of the Ansar. And he told the man from the Ansar to help him. So he took him home and he asked his wife, do we have anything to feed him? And she said, we do not have anything except for the children's food. And so he said, okay, put them to sleep early and then bring me the food. And then put the food down and turn the lamp off. And then he offered what he had to his guest. And as the story goes, and I'm sure we've heard this story, right? I heard it when I was a kid. I thought it was such one of those stories you remember, that he kept asking his wife to turn the lights dimmer and then dimmer, and to the extent where it seemed like to the man that his wife and him were both eating food from their plates, like they were making eating motions and things. So the other person thought everyone's eating together, but in reality, they had actually given him all of their food. And the guest then left and he was satisfied. And so essentially they preferred him over themselves. And then in the following morning, the Prophet Muhammad he went back to the Messenger of God. And the Prophet said, truly the dwellers of the heavens are amazed at what you two have done. And in another narration, إِنَّ اللَّهَ ضَحِكَ مِنْ فَعْلَكُمَا, like Allah like laughed, like, and that's the word in Arabic. Laughed is like the wrong term because we're talking about Allah, but that's the literal translation of the word ضحك, meaning he was so pleased with what you have done. And this is another example of that they prefer others over themselves, even if they are impoverished. And the sentence is not the sentence that comes, or the clause, even if they are impoverished, is the translate this, it's like the hal for which, or the condition or the set of circumstances for the people who prefer others over themselves. So you can prefer others over yourself and not be impoverished, right? And that's also a good thing. But who's actually being described? It's them, the ones who are impoverished and they prefer others over themselves. We've witnessed this sometimes, right? In some of the food distributions that we used to do before the pandemic had started, we would sometimes go to the area that had, I think it was behind the stadium. And there's a lot of people who are homeless there, and there's tents. It was like a big, the city like kicked them out now, but back then it was almost like a tent city. You could just go directly and give people, and what we used to, I remember the first time that we went, it was like the halal KFC boxes, which they, by the way, they literally told me like this is their favorite thing that people bring. And I remember like when we had run out of boxes and there were still some people left, there were people who were going and taking their boxes to other tents. So they're living in the tent city themselves. This is like their favorite meal, and you see them go and try to share it or split it or give it to others. Or they would tell us, by the way, there's like, we'd give it to them, and then they would indicate there's a lot of people in that other direction too. So make sure you get them as well. And so like, subhanAllah, you see iftar easily amongst people who, subhanAllah, they themselves are impoverished, are in need of that. So there's a section that's oh, let me see how much time, I think we have time, inshallah. There's this part where it says they prefer others, well, and whosoever is shielded from the avarice of his soul or her soul, it is they who shall prosper. And Imam Ibn Najib mentions that Allah shields these people. Allah is the one who shields them from being overcome or won over or controlled by this aspect of the lower self. And what is shuh? What is the shuh of the nafs? Is it greed? Is it like stinginess? And so he says, no, there's a difference between the two. It's been translated as avarice. So one of the definitions for shuh is actually to eat your brother's wealth oppressively, meaning you took their wealth without a right. That's one of the definitions. There's a second definition, which is shuh is to have stinginess with what you have, but also wanting what others have and what's in their hands. Right, so that's like, it's not just, I'm not just gonna like care about what's mine, I'm also gonna care about what's yours and want that too. And then they said there's a distinction between that and bukhl. Bukhl is just stinginess with your own wealth. And essentially it's stinginess with your wealth, but it's not that you are caring about other people's things or wanting what other people have and, greedy with what other people have, like, that quality. And what's mentioned is shuh is considered uglier than bukhl. So this is like this, avarice or greed, and it all stems from like an abundance of love for this world, like that quality of the lower self. And so whoever Allah guards them from this shuh, and it's mentioned in the passive tense. It's whoever is shielded from this avarice, then it is they who shall prosper. There, and what Imam Ibn Najib mentions is they essentially succeed and win everything that is actually worth winning. And he said, and he like mentions there's like everything that's actually worth wanting is what they will actually attain. the person who's guarded from this. It also has broader implications. It indicates removing this world from one's heart so that the heart is no longer attached to what passes it by. There's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, abstain from the world and God will love you. Abstain from what pertains to other people and people will love you. And also, it describes those who feel no need for what is destined for others and thereby protected. There's another hadith. Your worst enemy is the soul between your two sides. And it's not soul, it's like the self between your two sides. And this is the lower self. And the Prophet ﷺ also warned his followers, be on your guard against committing oppression, for oppression is a darkness on the day of resurrection. Be on your guard against avarice, against shuh, for avarice is what destroyed those who were before you. It made them shed blood and make lawful that which was unlawful to them. Okay, here's an actual trivia question for those who attended tafsir class. How is the verse that we are covering now in this tafsir related to something that we mentioned maybe just a few weeks ago about, I'm going to give some of it away, right? I'm going to give just one word and you guys tell me what you remember, right? That Allah does not guide who? What was that?
The ones that are already instructed.
Well, okay, so let me give you a different clue because I just, this is the we said that if you put others in general before God and his messenger and striving in his way, how is this related? We talked about it, and then how the verse ends, Allah does not love who? How are they described? The people who put others in front of God and his messenger. Yes.
Lovers of the world. People that ego, pride, would rather do something worldly than.
So that was in the beginning of the verse. Like if so, but it ends, and Allah does not guide who. And we were like, how is this the thing that it ends with? Because it's talking about love of the world, but it ends with this. Yes. Ungrateful. That not in that verse. No. Oh, Asnawi. You fell. Just kidding. I'm teasing. Yes, it's the oppressors, but it's the unjust. It wasn't Zalimun. It was it's a derivative of the word qist, which actually means justice, but I'm thinking it was the there's another, the Arabic of it is escaping me, but it's the people who essentially don't practice this qist. I wanted to say it's muqsitin, but I don't want to say it incorrectly. But I just know that the meaning of that verse was the people who are unjust. And the tafsir of that, it was that basically if you put others in front of God and his messenger, that will necessarily cause things to be put out of their place. And when things are put out of their place, injustice happens. And so the source of us living together in an equitable way is putting God and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and striving in their way first before everything else. Then everything else will fall into place. But if we don't do that, things are going to be out of place. And once things are out of place, oppression will just follow. That's the result. It was not in Surah Al Hashr. And actually the verse itself that I'm referring to was in the commentary of the verse we were covering. So it wasn't in the surah itself. That's why I can't remember the I want to say it was that, but I don't want to say it definitively. So there's a lot here, and I'm just going to read a little bit. I wanted to to focus a little bit for us in the tafsir this week on this quality, because it's hard to put it in the right place. Like how much like I live in this world. I have to have a roof over my head. I have to eat. I have to have like my necessities. How much love of this world is really gonna make me pass a limit by which everything else falls is just, falls, not, I shouldn't say fall apart, but will start to deviate. And so in Sheikh Hamza's translation of and commentary on Imam Mawlud's poem, the book Purification of the Heart, his Imam Mawlud's poem is Untitled Chapter. There's a section on love of the world. And I'm just going to mention a few points from it. One is that just the nasiha that we got in the past, Isa alayhi salam told us that the world is a bridge, so pass over it to the next world, but do not try to build on it. And then he mentions that we should love, for example, the things of this world that help us achieve happiness in the hereafter, such as love of the Qur'an, of the Kaaba, of the Prophet ﷺ, of our parents, of godly people, of books of knowledge, of children, and of brothers and sisters who help us in our religious affairs, as well as love of wealth in order to give it to the needy. The idea of wanting to have so you can give it freely to the people who are poor. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he prohibited the vilification of this world. So this idea of cursing the world. He said, do not curse the world, for God created the world, and the world is a means of reaching God. And so this idea of balance, we do live here, but it's not about being here. What he also emphasizes is this idea of attachment to things that are actually they serve no purpose. They serve no, and he says that loving temporal things of the world to the point that it suppresses one's spiritual yearning. So that's there's something that is getting in the way of a person's wanting to worship God or wanting to be a servant of God. And that's something that the person, it may not be haram at all, but it may be a quality of or an aspect of loving the world in a way that is more than healthy for them. And that's why the habit of what we worked on last week was really about habits. It wasn't about haram, it was about what's in my way. What do I really want to, and that, to have something like that you're just trying to overcome, that's not the same as basically taking things in and just being what's wrong with this, right? It's all fine. And there's the attitude of I'm working on myself is not the same attitude as negligence is one thing, but even worse than negligence is just basically there's justifying it, being there's nothing wrong with this, and I can continue living this in really indulgent way that doesn't particularly care about God. That's really what harms us on a spiritual level. And so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he also says from the things that include love of the world are even the love of excuse me even the love of non-physical items like praise. And so he says there's a difference between appreciation and praise. And in the text he mentions that there's nothing wrong with a person who wants to be appreciated for what they've done, which I found surprising, because I had teachers who told me you're not supposed to really look for that either, because in the Quran it says لا نريد منكم شكورا جزاء ولا شكورا. We don't want from you any kind of reward or any kind of thanks or credit, basically. So what he mentions here is that he says that if someone is flattering you, that's the person, or people of flattery, we're not supposed to be people of flattery. We can be kind. Adab is to be kind to everyone, really, but flattery is someone is doing something wrong. And they mentioned the poets that used to flatter the tyrants, and these people used to kill people openly, whatever, and they would just go and lie to their faces and say beautiful things about them, just to win their favor. So he gives that as an example of something that's not a physical item, flattery, but it's included from the love of this world. And I think there's more to say on that, but we are going to actually, for this week, we're going to think about a habit that may have something to do with something from the love of this world, not necessarily an addiction type thing, although that could be included. But I mean, for example, cell phones are habits that are not intentional. You know what I mean? I almost feel like our phones have happened to us. Like they happened to us. They descended upon the world, and we're all having to struggle with this new thing. But I mean like something really that is from the things you love in this world. And it's not something that's haram, like it's something you're allowed to love. But if you can reflect on it, is there a way that I love this thing that gets in between my relationship with God? And the idea is if you can work on something throughout the week that alleviates you from that in some way. So I can give a few examples. I know people who have too much clothes. They just keep buying. Their closet is full of clothing with tags on them, never worn, brand new. Every time they see an outfit that's beautiful, they buy it. And so they have a closet full of unused clothing. Maybe the idea would be like, instead of hoarding, which essentially is a quality of love of this world, like you can donate it. You could even sell it, but just don't hoard it. Does that make sense? Like hoarding is a particular thing because it leads to, so if there's something that you particularly hoard, knowingly or unknowingly, maybe confront that this week. How many of us have more than like 40 mugs in our cabinets? Mugs. I don't know if I have 40, to be honest, but there's a lot of mugs. It's something that people just, you know what it is, and it's the idea of like give some of them away. Oh, but this memory of this one and this one I got when, and so it's like, yeah, but like this like too much of anything is israf. It's just waste. So that's what I'm hoping we can kind of work on this week is like, is there something that we have maybe that's wasteful? Maybe that's a way that we can incorporate sort of this theme for ourselves. And if you have an opportunity to prefer someone else over yourself this week, to take that opportunity. Like if it comes up naturally, you can intend to do it, but just see how it goes. The last dua is really, really beautiful, and the tafsir on it. Okay, do you think I don't have time to do it? I'm getting my permission from my driver because of the train. Okay, I don't want to leave you guys on a cliffhanger. Okay, it's fine. We will start with this next week. I don't know how the time escaped me this time, but inshallah, that's the assignment. And if anyone has any questions about it, you guys are welcome to contact me throughout the week. I guess we'll just end because of we'll end with dua, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم وفقنا لما تحبه وترضى واجعلنا من عبيدك السعداء وأمتنا على كلمة الهدى علمنا ما ينفعنا ووفقنا للعمل بما علمتنا به واجعل ما نحن فيه خالصا مخلصا لوجهك الكريم آمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. O God, give us success to attain what you love and are pleased with. Make us amongst your felicitous servants. Allow us to die on the statement of guidance. Teach us what will benefit us and give us the success to act upon what you have taught us. Make that in which we are engaged pure and devoted to your noble face. Ameen, O Lord of the worlds. O God, make this gathering of ours a gathering enveloped in mercy, and our parting thereafter a parting of our sins purged and forgiven, not one of us wretched or deprived. And peace and blessings be upon our Master Muhammad and upon his noble family and companions and followers. Ameen.